My uncle said you'll thank me later. I didn't realize how much those words would change my heart. The story opens with the narrator, a 24-year-old man, earnest and observant, sitting at his cluttered desk late in the evening. The soft glow of a desk lamp illuminates scattered papers and a half-empty coffee mug. He is at a crossroads, unsure about a recent decision regarding his career or personal life. His mind is restless, replaying doubts over and over, the kind of quiet anxiety that makes even familiar spaces feel confining. Enter the uncle, a man in his early 40s, calm and assured, moving through the room with an effortless ease. He carries a presence that commands attention without demanding it, his confidence tempered by a quiet warmth. The uncle notices the narrator's tension and sits on the edge of the chair opposite him, leaning slightly forward. His voice is low but steady, the kind that makes the listener feel rooted even amid uncertainty. "You'll thank me later," he says, almost offhandedly, but there's a hint of a smile that makes the words feel like a gentle promise rather than a directive. The narrator frowns slightly, unsure whether the uncle is serious or teasing, but something in the tone keeps him silent. The room is quiet except for the soft hum of the lamp and the distant sound of a city settling into night. When the uncle lightly places a hand on his nephew's shoulder, the narrator feels a grounding warmth that cuts through his anxious thoughts. The touch is fleeting yet deliberate, a subtle reassurance that he is not alone in navigating life's uncertainties. As the uncle moves to leave, he glances back with a knowing look. There is no judgment, no expectation, only a quiet confidence that comes from experience. The narrator is left with a lingering curiosity. What exactly does the uncle mean? What path is he nudging him toward? The words, "You'll thank me later," echo softly, and for the first time in hours, the narrator feels a sense of possibility rather than confusion. Throughout this scene, the story subtly introduces themes that will grow: trust, guidance, and the quietly powerful influence of someone older who sees more than what's on the surface. The audience begins to sense the importance of this uncle figure, not just as a familial presence but as a catalyst for the narrator's journey into emotional and relational discovery. Visual and sensory cues should be emphasized in a YouTube adaptation: the soft, golden light casting gentle shadows, the faint aroma of coffee mixing with the evening air, the smooth texture of the uncle's sweater as his hand briefly rests on the narrator's shoulder. These small, tangible details evoke comfort and connection, setting the tone for the slow, emotionally rich development that will follow. By the end of Keynote 1, the narrator's internal state has shifted subtly. Confusion and tension have given way to curiosity, and a quiet sense of trust has been planted. The audience is invited to linger in this intimate, warm moment, setting the stage for encounters that will awaken deeper emotions and gently nudge him toward experiences he hasn't yet imagined. Following his uncle's advice, the narrator finds himself stepping into a new space, something he might never have explored on his own. Perhaps it's a small, warmly lit cafe tucked away from the bustle of the city, or a quiet art gallery filled with soft echoes of footsteps and muted conversations. The air smells faintly of roasted coffee beans and old paper, a comforting mix that immediately soothes the edge of his anxiety. He is unsure why he's here, but something in his uncle's words urges him forward. "You'll thank me later." It is here that he notices her, a woman in her early 40s, poised yet approachable, exuding a quiet confidence that draws attention without demanding it. She is arranging books on a shelf or studying a painting, completely absorbed, yet the way her hair catches the light, the subtle tilt of her head, and the calm rhythm of her movements immediately make the narrator aware of her presence. There is something magnetic, but not overpowering, a sense of warmth and assurance that makes him instinctively want to approach yet hesitate. Their first interaction is accidental but charged with subtle tension. Perhaps he reaches for the same book or a cup of coffee, and their hands brush briefly. The narrator notices the warmth of her skin, the slight tremor of recognition or surprise, and the soft pressure that lingers just enough to register in his chest. He feels a quickened heartbeat, an unfamiliar mix of nervousness and curiosity. She looks up, and for a moment, their eyes meet. There is a quiet awareness, an unspoken acknowledgement of this fleeting connection. Her gaze is steady yet inviting, hinting at openness without being overt. She smiles, a small, knowing curve of her lips that seems effortless but leaves a lasting impression. The narrator feels both exhilarated and shy, acutely aware of the age gap yet drawn to the depth of her presence. The uncle, whether intentionally or not, is nearby, perhaps seated at a corner table, watching with a subtle smile. He doesn't interfere, but his quiet approval underscores that this encounter is part of the plan he hinted at earlier. The narrator senses that this meeting is more than chance. It carries the weight of opportunity, personal growth, and the stirring of emotions he hasn't yet fully acknowledged. Visual and sensory details anchor the scene for YouTube's storytelling. Sunlight glinting off her hair, the warmth of a nearby lamp reflecting on her face, the faint perfume that drifts through the air, and the comforting hum of conversation and clinking cups around them. Even the texture of her clothing or the gentle brush of her hand on his becomes a small, intimate moment that lingers in his memory. By the end of this keynote, the narrator is left with an undeniable curiosity and a quietly growing admiration. There is no rush, no overt confession, only the spark of connection, a subtle promise of emotional exploration, and the beginning of a slow, deliberate tension that will carry the story forward. The audience senses that this encounter is the doorway into something unexpected, tender, and transformative. After their first encounter, the narrator finds himself thinking about her more than he expected. The memory of her brief touch, her gentle smile, and the steady warmth in her eyes lingers, as if leaving a small mark on his day. Encouraged by his uncle's cryptic advice, he seeks out small ways to cross paths again, perhaps at the same cafe, during a community event, or in a local bookstore. Each meeting is casual, almost accidental, but there is a quiet electricity in every interaction that neither of them can fully ignore. Their conversations are soft, thoughtful, and unhurried. She talks about her work, her passions, perhaps sharing stories of challenges she has overcome. The narrator listens, genuinely attentive, asking questions not to impress but to understand. Slowly, he begins to share parts of his own life, uncertainties, ambitions, and fears that he hasn't voiced to many. In her presence, he feels safe enough to expose these vulnerabilities, and she responds with a warmth that is both comforting and subtly affirming. Physical interactions remain understated yet meaningful. She may brush a loose strand of his hair from his forehead, her fingers lingering momentarily, or rest a hand lightly on his arm while laughing at a shared joke. These small gestures carry a weight that goes beyond mere friendliness. They communicate trust, closeness, and an unspoken curiosity. Each touch leaves him quietly aware of her proximity, the warmth of her skin, the subtle rhythm of her breathing, the gentle pressure that lingers for just a heartbeat longer than necessary. The narrator notices the little things, the way her eyes crinkle when she smiles, the soft cadence of her voice, the way her perfume mingles with the scent of a cafe or library. He becomes acutely attuned to her gestures, memorizing the curve of her hand as she reaches for a cup of tea, or the way she folds her hands when thinking. In these ordinary moments, extraordinary intimacy begins to bloom, silent and unspoken. Emotionally, he grapples with the age difference. It is a quiet, almost invisible tension. He wonders if his feelings are appropriate, if she could ever see him beyond the gap. Yet, every thoughtful glance and shared laugh chips away at these doubts. For her part, she shows a subtle, deliberate openness, leaning closer in conversation, maintaining steady eye contact, offering moments of gentle reassurance. She is confident but not imposing, vulnerable yet self-assured. Ambient details enrich these encounters, the soft hum of a cafe, the faint rustle of pages in a bookstore, or the warm afternoon light streaming through a window. Each sensory cue amplifies their growing connection, making the audience feel as if they are witnessing a quiet, blossoming intimacy in real time. By the end of this keynote, the audience senses the subtle progression. Casual meetings and small gestures have deepened into an emotionally rich bond. Romantic tension simmers just below the surface, quietly building anticipation for moments of vulnerability and confession yet to come. The slow burn has begun in earnest, grounded in trust, attentiveness, and the gentle recognition of mutual longing. As their quiet interactions continue, the narrator begins to feel the pull of emotions he hadn't anticipated. What started as curiosity and admiration has deepened into something more complicated, a mixture of longing, hesitation, and self-doubt. The age gap, once a distant consideration, now feels tangible in his mind. He wonders if he is reading too much into her gestures or if she could ever see him in a romantic light. The conflict is subtle but persistent, simmering beneath his usually calm exterior. He notices every detail about her, the way she tilts her head slightly when thinking, the warmth of her hand when brushing against his, the soft exhale of her laughter. Each small touch sparks a reaction he struggles to interpret. When she rests her hand lightly on his shoulder while laughing, he freezes for a moment, acutely aware of the gentle pressure and her steady heartbeat. It is comforting yet disorienting, stirring feelings he isn't sure he is ready to name. These moments are punctuated by hesitation. He finds himself pulling back slightly during conversation, second-guessing whether leaning closer or lingering on her words is appropriate. She, too, mirrors subtle restraint, a soft pause before her hand brushes his, a deliberate distance maintained while talking. These near misses, like reaching for the same book or both moving to the same side of a small table, create an unspoken tension that fills the air with anticipation. The uncle's words echo in the back of the narrator's mind. "You'll thank me later." He starts to understand that the advice was more than about life choices. It was about stepping into emotional openness, confronting feelings he might have avoided. Yet the path is uncertain, and he grapples with his own insecurities. The thought of social perception, the age difference, and his inexperience with such emotional depth adds layers of complexity. Sensory cues emphasize the emotional intensity without crossing boundaries. The soft rustle of her jacket as she turns to speak, the warm glow of afternoon sunlight on her hair, the faint aroma of her perfume, these details anchor him in the moment. He notices the subtle rise and fall of her chest as she laughs, the gentle tilt of her hand when she gestures. Every nuance reinforces both the attraction and the hesitation, making their connection feel both thrilling and fragile. This part of the story allows the audience to empathize deeply with the narrator's internal struggle. It shows the emotional stakes rising, the desire to be close, the fear of overstepping, and the intoxicating pull of subtle intimacy. The tension is neither melodramatic nor rushed. It simmers gently, like a quiet storm building just beyond sight. By the end of Keynote 4, the narrator is caught between two worlds, the warmth and closeness of their connection, and the cautious self-doubt that keeps him from fully embracing it. This tension lays the groundwork for the eventual moment of vulnerability, where both characters confront their emotions honestly, and the slow-burn romance takes a deeper, more meaningful turn. By now, the quiet tension between the narrator and the woman has grown into something undeniable. The slow burn of their connection reaches a pivotal moment, a point where emotional walls begin to crumble, and both characters confront feelings that have been simmering beneath the surface. This is not about romance in a flashy or dramatic sense. It is about the quiet, human intimacy that comes from trust, empathy, and the courage to be seen. It begins with a shared experience, perhaps a rainy afternoon spent in a cozy cafe, or an unexpected encounter that forces them to sit together for longer than usual. The narrator notices small signs of her vulnerability, a fleeting shadow in her eyes, a subtle tremor in her hands as she talks about a personal struggle, or a quiet sigh that slips out when she lets down her guard. He responds not with grand gestures, but with attentive presence, listening, acknowledging, and providing silent reassurance. She, in turn, notices him in a way that goes beyond casual attention. His steady gaze, the patience in his voice, and the small gestures, adjusting a chair closer, brushing a stray strand of hair from her face, communicate more than words ever could. The tension that had been simmering now crystallizes in these moments, the unspoken acknowledgement of feelings, the nervous thrill of proximity, and the intoxicating comfort of trust. Physical affection remains subtle yet meaningful. When she hesitates, he gently places a hand on her shoulder, a grounding, non-intrusive gesture that conveys reassurance and attentiveness. She leans slightly into him, their bodies not pressed together but close enough that warmth radiates from the contact. The narrator feels the rhythm of her breathing, the soft weight of her hand when she rests it on his arm, and the comforting familiarity that these small touches bring. Every contact is loaded with emotional resonance, signaling care, trust, and the growing intimacy between them. Sensory detail enriches the scene: the muted patter of rain on the cafe windows, the low hum of quiet conversation around them, the faint aroma of coffee and warm pastries mingling in the air. Sunlight filters through the clouds, casting a gentle glow across her face, highlighting the subtle expressions that reveal both strength and vulnerability. These sensory cues anchor the audience in the moment, allowing them to experience the tension, warmth, and emotional depth alongside the characters. Emotionally, the narrator feels a surge of gratitude and awe, gratitude for the connection they share, and awe at the courage required to open oneself so fully to another. The woman's trust, mirrored by his own willingness to be present, solidifies the bond between them. This is the emotional peak of the story so far, a tender, YouTube-safe expression of romantic and emotional intimacy that is grounded in authenticity rather than spectacle. By the end of Keynote 5, both characters have crossed a subtle threshold. They are aware of their feelings, acutely attuned to each other's presence, and emotionally vulnerable in ways they have not been before. The slow burn tension has transformed into a quiet, shared acknowledgement of desire and trust, setting the stage for gradual acceptance, mutual affection, and the warmth of the resolution to follow. After the emotionally charged moment of vulnerability, the narrator and the woman find themselves in a new, delicate phase of their relationship. The walls of hesitation that had kept them apart begin to soften, and both are quietly exploring the boundaries of their growing connection. It is not a rush to romance, but a slow, deliberate acceptance that allows trust and emotional intimacy to flourish naturally. The narrator begins to act on his feelings in small, thoughtful ways. He chooses to sit a little closer when they share a table at the cafe, brushing against her hand lightly as he passes a book or a cup of tea. Each gesture is subtle, carefully measured to avoid overstepping, yet undeniably charged with meaning. The woman notices these nuances and responds in kind, leaning in slightly when they talk, letting her hand linger near his, or smiling with a warmth that communicates her quiet approval and growing fondness. Physical affection remains gentle, deliberate, and meaningful. Perhaps he offers his coat when she shivers from a cool breeze, and she allows herself to accept it, their hands brushing as he wraps it around her shoulders. A brief touch of fingers, the gentle warmth of a hand resting on an arm, or a subtle nudge in conversation becomes a language of trust and connection between them. Every interaction carries emotional weight, creating an intimacy that feels deep and enduring without being overt or inappropriate. Internal reflection plays a key role in this phase. The narrator notices how naturally he feels at ease with her, how her presence calms his anxieties, and how each moment of shared laughter or quiet conversation leaves him with a lingering sense of joy. He begins to understand the depth of his feelings, not just admiration or curiosity, but a genuine desire for closeness, companionship, and emotional connection. Likewise, she reflects on how comfortable she feels around him, appreciating his attentiveness, thoughtfulness, and the subtle ways he makes her feel seen and valued. The uncle's earlier advice, "You'll thank me later," resonates with renewed clarity. The narrator realizes that the guidance was not about a single action, but about opening himself to experiences and relationships that enrich life in unexpected ways. The audience begins to see the full arc of the slow burn journey. Trust, emotional risk, and subtle connection have brought the characters closer than they anticipated, laying the foundation for meaningful affection. Sensory-rich details continue to anchor the story. The soft rustle of her sweater as she leans closer, the comforting warmth of her hand brushing his arm, the gentle sunlight streaming through a window as they share a quiet moment. These small, tangible details heighten the sense of intimacy. Background sounds, the distant chatter of a cafe, the quiet hum of a city street, or the soft patter of rain outside, enhance the warmth and realism of their interactions. By the end of Keynote 6, both characters have embraced a new rhythm of closeness. Hesitation remains, but it no longer dominates their connection. Their gestures, glances, and subtle touches communicate a shared understanding. Emotional intimacy has been established, trust has deepened, and the slow burn romance is poised for a satisfying, heartwarming resolution. The stage is now set for Part 7, where the story culminates in gentle fulfillment, warmth, and meaningful togetherness. The slow burn journey reaches its gentle, heartwarming conclusion. After weeks of subtle interactions, quiet touches, and moments of shared vulnerability, the narrator and the woman have settled into a rhythm of mutual trust, understanding, and affection. The tension that once simmered beneath the surface has transformed into a calm intimacy, a connection that feels both natural and deeply fulfilling. The story's climax is understated yet emotionally powerful. Perhaps they find themselves walking together in the soft light of early evening, the golden sun casting a warm glow across the streets. Their steps are in sync, a comfortable silence filling the spaces between them. Every glance carries meaning, a shared smile, a lingering look, a small laugh that echoes the bond they've cultivated. There is no need for grand declarations. Their closeness speaks for itself. Physical affection remains gentle, deliberate, and profoundly meaningful. The narrator's hand brushes against hers as they pass, a fleeting touch that lingers just long enough to send a subtle thrill through both of them. She leans slightly closer when they pause to admire a view or share a quiet conversation, her shoulder brushing his in a way that conveys warmth and trust. When he gently places his hand on her back to guide her through a doorway, she responds with a soft, approving pressure, acknowledging the closeness they share. Each touch is imbued with emotional resonance, communicating care, connection, and quiet desire without crossing into overtly romantic or sexual territory. Internal reflection highlights the depth of their journey. The narrator realizes how profoundly this connection has changed him, how her presence has brought clarity, confidence, and a sense of belonging. He recalls his uncle's words, now fully understood. "You'll thank me later." Indeed, the guidance led him to a relationship rich with emotional intimacy, trust, and meaningful human connection. She, too, reflects on the unexpected joy of discovering someone who listens, understands, and meets her on equal emotional ground. Their mutual appreciation deepens the bond, making each small gesture, glance, and touch feel significant. Sensory-rich details enhance the scene for a YouTube audience. The warm breeze ruffles her hair gently, the fading sunlight reflects softly on her face, and the faint scent of her perfume mingles with the evening air. The quiet hum of distant traffic, the soft crunch of leaves underfoot, and the muted murmur of people in the background all serve to anchor the intimacy in a real, relatable world. These small, tangible elements make every glance, touch, and shared laugh feel alive and immediate. By the end of Keynote 7, the narrator and the woman share a final, meaningful moment, perhaps sitting side by side on a park bench, her head resting lightly against his shoulder, their hands brushing in quiet acknowledgement of the bond they have cultivated. The story concludes with warmth, tenderness, and the emotional satisfaction of a slow-burn romance fully realized. The audience is left with a sense of completion, a narrative arc where hesitation, vulnerability, and trust have blossomed into genuine affection and connection. The uncle's presence, though subtle, is honored in the conclusion. His initial advice catalyzed the journey, but the love and trust that now exist are entirely the character's own. The slow, deliberate build-up pays off in an emotionally rich, YouTube-safe resolution that leaves viewers with a lingering sense of warmth, hope, and quiet joy.